This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows.
This week, Inhumans, episodes 1 and 2.
We are the change that we seek. We will have a new beginning. When the current crisis has passed, we will leave Adelan and go to Earth. Life will be what you make of it. The doors of opportunity will be wide open. We will create our hope. We will create our destiny. We will create our will. We will not let anyone or anything stop us, because nothing can keep us from being free.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast hidden on the moon. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
It would be great if we were on the moon. There'd be a lot more echo, though.
A lot more echo? Do you think it's echoing on the moon?
I assume it's echoing. Well, because there's no natural foliage or anything to...
I guess, but there's nothing to bounce off either, right? There's no walls.
You make an excellent point.
So just go out and never stop. I don't know how sound works, though.
What are you talking about? You're a professional sound engineer.
I'm a professional sound engineer.
As you can tell by the quality of this recording.
The high quality of this particular recording and all other previous recordings.
With the IKEA blanket hanging behind you to suck up sound.
It's perfect soundproofing. All right, Jordan. So this week, we're watching Inhumans. 2017? 2016?
By far our newest show we've ever seen.
So what do you know about the Inhumans?
I know a little bit about them. I never read them. Like, I know it's Stanley and Jack Kirby, and I could tell you just the basic plot of it. I could tell you it's Jack Kirby. That's right up his alley. So, like, did Stanley have anything to do with this? Probably very, very minimal. But I knew that I thought they were from the 60s, which I do think, yeah. So they started 1965 as their first appearance. Fantastic Four 45. I looked it up. But I knew them more from the sort of late 90s run, because I know it had won some awards. I think it won an Eisner Award. But that was where I was a little more familiar with them, sort of a newer version of them. But my knowledge wasn't that high for them. Like, I know the basic concept, but I never really read them.
I know they're a Marvel property, and I know this pilot was in the Imax.
The reason I say it's like Jack Kirby is he had a tendency to create these gigantic universes. Every time he had a story, it's like, well, here's the story. But it's never just like guy meets girl or whatever. It's okay. Let's go back 5,000 years. Here's what happened. That's why I was like, as soon as we started this, I was like, oh, this is so Jack Kirby.
So ran on ABC.
ABC, yep.
September 29th, 2017 to November 10th, 2017.
Now let me ask you. You mentioned just a moment ago that this was shot on Imax. I have two questions about that, and you might have the answers. One, was the entire series shot on IMAX or just the pilot? And secondly, did it air in theaters first and then on TV or simultaneously? Do you remember?
I don't know the answer to whether it was all done on IMAX. I would suspect probably just this sort of pilot movie combo they have here.
I think you're probably right. Anyways, we'll know as we watch further.
And it premiered at the IMAX, I think, weeks before the actual TV release of it. So it was kind of like a prelude to it. This is kind of, Marvel's still in its big heyday right now, but this was kind of like after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there's like going to be a big new Marvel movie and or TV show, and I think the idea was to hype it up with an IMAX. And you'll see in the opening credits of this show, it's like produced by Marvel Entertainment with IMAX, because IMAX clearly put a lot of equipment into this, and we're like kind of like, yeah, great, we're involved in this too. We want to get on the Marvel train.
And there are so many shots in this that trying to take advantage of having a gigantic camera. It's all just swooping shots.
I would bet that those swooping shots, that's probably where the IMAX team comes in, because they do a lot of documentary, a lot of Vista. So that's probably where IMAX comes on as producers. They come in, they shoot all the Vista stuff, and then they hand off the rest to the TV directing team. So all the actual acting and action stuff is probably by a completely different team. That would be my bet anyway. So do you want to know what was happening in the world between
in 2017?
September 29th and November 10th?
Yeah.
In 2017? Can you even remember what was happening?
Were we doing the podcast? I don't think we were yet, right?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't remember what was happening in 2017.
You know what? It was a bad time.
Was it?
All around for everyone. I honestly tried to look it up, and there wasn't even like one nice thing that happened in that
oh, really?
month and a half, 2 months span.
Well, give me some unhappy things.
I mean, three mass attacks in America.
Oh, yeah.
Three
okay.
in a 2 month span. Like, America lives in a bad place right now. It was the Vegas shooting,
right,
followed by the New York truck attack,
right,
followed by the Texas church shooting.
Oh.
I'm like, and I was just like, those were all within the same like 60-day window. That's awful. Just awful.
And then to add to that, this came out in Imax.
Well, this was before that.
Oh,
this was during the run of the show. So things were before that. When it was on IMAX, everything was a different world. Like we we were living in like a sunny world before that. And then the thing that I noted though that was maybe still awful, but not in a tragic a way. German newspaper first published all the Panama Papers. So it's like kind of when the Panama Papers came into people's consciousness.
That's interesting.
You can kind of see why a irrelevant piece of fluff like this, maybe people weren't like looking to like latch onto.
Right.
Although maybe you would think they'd want some sort of escapism, but like the contrast between these two things, like what's happening in the world while this show's that is just like, it doesn't feel like it's in the same world.
I mean, it is an interesting point, and I don't know if it will organically come up in the next several episodes as we talk about this show, but obviously this podcast is about shows that didn't make it or at least had short runs or were underappreciated. Marvel, I would say, still at this point, or Disney, really for the most part have been financially knocking out of the park. These are all successful properties. This was not one in terms of, I'm assuming, the money put into it and the length of the program they got, but it's interesting to know or find out if that was just a rare misfire or if it was something at that time. Like, was this, you know what I mean? Were they just burning out of TV properties?
I mean, I think we'll have to dig into it a little more over future episodes, but I think the ABC TV show properties never really clicked because they had Agent Carter.
Right.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to stick around, but I think it came to some brief almost cancellations. And then they started sort of doing their Netflix shows, which people tended to gravitate to because they were, you know, a little closer to the movies and a little more like they could do more things there. And, you know, even those are pretty hit and miss, I think, with audiences. So I just don't think Marvel ever like mastered television in the way they mastered feature films.
Right.
I'll give you some notable deaths just so we can end this, rain some more on this little parade.
Okay.
September 30th, Monty Hall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then after that, 3 in October, this is going to be a huge loss for you. These are all, I think, your musical icons.
Yeah, okay.
All three of them. October 2nd, Tom Petty.
Yeah, that was sad.
October 17th, Gord Downey.
That's right.
And
not a big Tragically Hip fan, but still sad.
October 24th, Fats Domino.
Oh, that is sad.
That is real.
Fats Domino.
Those are all three like major musicians. Like I was just like, whoa, that's a.
That was a rough. You're right. That's a rough 3 months.
This is it's only 2 months. Like it's the roughest 60 days I think I've ever read. No, I'm sure there's rougher somewhere, but
well, there was those that 1 month that Court came out.
That 1 month, and everyone's like, "Woof."
Yeah, well, let's just forget that. Everyone,
let's call this whole thing off.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to get into it?
Yes. Behold the Inhumans.
So, because the first 2 episodes were basically edited together to be a feature film, and then split up for the TV show again, I think we're going to treat these as episode 1 and 2 kind of as a single episode.
I think so.
So I'm going to give you the IMDb summary for episodes 1 and 2, Behold the Inhumans, and Those Who Would Destroy Us. The royal family, stranded in Hawaii after a military coup, faces internal strife, which they must overcome in order to return home before their way of life is destroyed forever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
who wrote that?
No one wanted to take credit.
No one wanted to take credit, huh?
They were just giving it to us out of the goodness of their heart.
And let me say before you even start, because I'm sure you've got a way that makes sense of keeping these sort of few plot lines going. If there's one major criticism I have of this show, is they jump back and forth from things so many times, it will give you whiplash. It's like, even the beginning, it's like, we're on the moon, now we're on Earth, now we're in Hawaii, now we're here, we're back on the moon. I think it's like 2 minutes, and you're like, okay, guys, just pick a scene you want to go with, and then just go from there.
There's definitely a lot of intercutting throughout this episode, and I have streamline the whole thing so we're not jumping all over the place. But yeah, it does open in Hawaii with an Inhuman named Trident who's trying to save a young woman with lizard eyes.
Yeah.
What
Yellow lizard eyes.
What does Trident look like, though?
Trident, I'm trying to remember now, actually. Because he's not in it that much. There's only like 2 real quick scenes.
Yeah, right at the top.
Is he green or is he yellow? He's green, right?
He's all green.
And he's got like a line down his face.
I think he's got a fin on the top of his head.
Is that what it was?
I think he's got a fin on the top of his head.
Yeah. Anyways, he's some sort of fish lizard man.
Fish lizard man. The two of them are pursued by gunmen who kill the lizard-eyed lady, shoot old Trident, who jumps off a cliff into the ocean. And I did enjoy as he hits the water. It's the bloodiest splash, like he exploded like a water balloon full of blood.
Yeah, and we don't know who these guys are that are attacking them, but they're sort of like look like guerrilla military,
paramilitary types. I do like though after he jumps off, they stop at the edge of the cliff and look at him on the water and they're like, well, mission accomplished.
I know, I love that.
And it's like, when has this ever been like? You have to confirm that kill, you guys.
They've never watched a TV show or read a comic book or anything like that. Like, yep, seems like our job's done.
Seems that's good. At which point we jump up to the moon to the city of Adeline. Adeline? I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's sort of hidden on the moon so Earth can't see it with like a biodome or a force field. It's kind of got shades of Wakanda, like that way of hiding a city.
Yep.
And we get to meet King Black Bolt and Queen Medusa as they have some sexy times off the top.
This is at least the second, if not third time we've watched a show where they do a real hard cut to a sex scene that, like, right off the beginning. Like the one that comes to mind immediately was
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed very early to jump right into their bedroom, but hey, give the audience what they want.
yeah. A little tantalizing, very chaste sort of sex scene where the whole point of the scene is to kind of introduce these two characters. It took me longer than it should have to realize the one main character, Black Bolt, can't speak, which you sort of get in the scene. But I was
let's do this now.
Yeah,
let's talk about Black Bolt. What are his powers?
Well, we learn later on, but first you realize he doesn't speak, and the realize he doesn't speak is he has some sort of banshee-esque voice that shoots out, sort of is a projectile, just pushes everything out of its way.
Yeah, it seems to cause some sort of wave of destruction if he makes any sort of noise or speaks.
But it's almost uncontrollable, so that's why he doesn't speak at all, because it's like, I think it's even like just like going, well, like kill people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what we come to learn is in a flashback is that when he was a teenager, he killed his parents. And what I actually thought was like one of my favorite moments of the entire pilot, where they're kind of like describing, or they're setting up the idea that he's not allowed to speak because something awful happens. And you get this cut to a flashback of like a petulant teen on a couch pouting really madly and then looking up at his parents and going, why? And they explode.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's great. I love the idea of a petulant teen exploding his parents by asking why.
I liked it too. It almost made me forgive flashbacks, which I hate. And this show not only loves doing flashbacks to the past, but they also like doing flashbacks to something that happened 2 minutes ago.
Well, I actually, scrolling through the cast list for the IMDb on this episode, I found the actors were credited as playing the parents, and like they're not big actors, but they're regular Canadian actors. So I think it was a much longer scene,
right,
where that was explained. I think it was perfectly. The editor made the perfect choice by you just get a shot of like a pouty teen saying the words "why" to his parents and them exploding. This is all you need. It's the only explanation you needed. It was so funny and so like so well executed. Not a lot is well executed in the show, but I thought that was like one of the perfect parts.
I agree with you.
And because he doesn't speak, he seems to use a lot of sign language.
Mm-hmm.
And also because he doesn't speak, actor, how am I going to pronounce this wrong? Anson Mount, Hell on Wheels, and I think he's in the new Star Trek as the Pike.
Yep.
He is doing his best to he can't speak. He is giving sign language. That's it. So he is constantly just like, I'm sure they're like, you need to show that you're mad. So he's mugging so hard. Like if he's confused, he has to like pull a face. If he's angry, he has to pull a face. If he's sad, he has to pull a face.
It's very silent film acting.
I think it's not his fault. I think they've really saddled him with like an impossible task. Like you're never allowed to speak, but you have to show all of the emotions in the world. But I find it very funny just to like. I'm actually enjoying watching him just like mug around.
It is funny. At first, I thought, "Wow, this is annoying," and then I started kind of liking it. I was, yeah, I'm on board that he has to like go, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at some point, I feel like they must have started over the course of even the pilot. He's just like, well, I guess I'm just gonna like go crazy because he just like gives crazy eyes. It was like, what is happening?
It's almost like he's gonna look at the audience and like roll his eyes, like, can you believe what I'm dealing with?
I mean, it's a lot like that, and it's grown on me as I watch the pilot. His queen is Medusa.
Yeah.
And what's her power, Jordan?
Well, she has excessively long red hair, and it is, I would assume, is controlled by her, but it seems almost like it has a mind of its own. It sort of can act as an appendage. It could reach out and grab things.
That's a good way of saying it. I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, is opposable hair a term I can use?
But there's two things about it. It's either shot in a show that has, I'm assuming, a very big budget, a not very good wig, at least in my opinion.
It is a bad wig.
Or okay CGI.
I mean, the CGI is whatever. I actually think the bigger problem with it is just the wig isn't good. It's not. It's a bad wig.
Yeah, it's a bad wig,
and it's her core character trait.
Exactly, and it's very prominent. And I mean, this is not a spoiler. There's a reason she's wearing a wig.
Yeah,
but yeah,
we'll get to it. We don't have to put up for the entire.
You're
series,
right, but it's distracting.
It is very distracting.
And now here's a question for you. When this came out, people really ragged on it. Maybe fair, maybe not. We'll know as we go along, and how bad it looked. I didn't think this actually looked bad.
Yeah,
but I can imagine watching this on Imax and seeing that wig would look real bad.
Well, I will put it this way. I think going to an IMAX to watch this must have been such a bizarre, disappointing experience because you're right, there's some Vista shots that are IMAX, but the action, all of the other like shooting of the people and the going around, it's just shot by a television director, like a competent television director. So it's fine on TV. Like it actually, I'm just like, this is just like anything else on television. But it's not something that's going to hold up if you go to a cinema for it.
Yeah. The fighting, especially, you're right, is very TV. We only have time to choreograph so much kind of fighting.
It's a lot of cut-ins for close-ups. You show a muzzle shooting and people running and a few explosions. You know, it's just like, we don't have time. We got to move. Like, you know, this is on a TV schedule. And I think as a TV show, I was just like, I think people have been a little hard on it. But I think also if you promoted an IMAX screening, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, I looked up the director too, and he, like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's directed a lot of television, but nothing that should tell you like he should be directing an IMAX feature film.
Right.
Like, he's doing a very good job of directing an episode of television. That's what's kind of bizarre about that, like, little backstory. It's just like, it was clearly such a bad idea.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like it was an idea someone had, everyone got on board, and then they started making it, and it was like, maybe it's not such a good idea, but like, the train's already left the station. You know?
We're promoting it this way. So I also want to say about Medusa and her hair, her CG hair. I think in theory and probably in the comics, it's like cool to have like moving hair. It is gross and unnerving to see a person's hair moving around like that. Like, they're never, not at one point, because like when they're in sexy time, she's using her hair, and it's just like, it made me feel ill. I was just like, I don't like seeing this.
That it's hard to please everyone, and a lot of times in these adaptations, specifically comic adaptations, not everything always translates. Like, you know, X-Men movies, they didn't want to have them in yellow spandex because they thought it would look silly. They were probably right. But, you know, some of the powers don't always look right. And you're right. Hair, an artist can draw it doing anything and it will look cool. It is hard to make this look cool.
It felt a little like a horror movie. It's just like maybe The Grudge or something where hair is like coming out of something. It's just like, it just felt like hair in real life is not something you want to really see doing things, I don't think.
But the whole point of the scene is basically to introduce both them as characters and that they're the king and queen of this society.
Of the moon.
Of the moon, yeah. Oh, you're right, of the moon.
We jump ahead and we head to a meeting at their high council of some sort where they're discussing a moon rover that nearly discovered their base. But essentially, this is an opportunity to meet the rest of the cast. I'll go through them all now and we can talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
There's Gorgon.
Yeah. Now, how much did you love that his name is Gorgon?
As soon as I saw his name was Gorgon, I'm like, oh, is this taking place in the Quark universe?
Yeah. By the way, I'm hoping that Quark becomes our new tech war. We're just always talking about Quark.
I mean, it was hilarious that someone else was named Gorgon after we just finished watching a show where the bad guys were the Gorgons.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Gorgon's a great name. It's a great name for a species or a race of aliens. A name as a character, I don't know, but yeah, sure, Gorgon. It's at least powerful sounding.
It's fine, yeah. I mean, it is perfectly fine.
And what's the deal with Gorgon?
His power is that he has hooves.
That seems to be it. No, not only hooves, but it seems like
instead of feet.
Instead of feet. And what I like is the way they always have to shoot it. One, I think he wears boots that cover it, and then they always have to just cut to his like a close up of the feet.
Well, yeah, that was weird. At some point, he just put on like regular human boots.
Yeah.
And then later he'll take them off again. I'm just like, I don't understand.
We don't know why. But it's because they don't want to have him wearing those fake feet all the time. But he seems to also be able to stomp real hard. That causes
that's
waves
true.
similar to like shockwaves, like Incredible Hulk can do. I think.
Yeah,
is sort of the idea.
He's the head of the Royal Guards.
He's the what's his face from Planet of the Apes.
Oh, you think he's Urko?
He might be our Urko.
Okay, great. And then we have Karnak.
Which also made me laugh, but just because I'm old, because that's the name Johnny Carson used to have for the like Swami character that he would do that would guess jokes. Anyways, that made me laugh.
Oh, that's good.
Me and everyone's grandfather.
Yeah, all the grandkids got their grandfathers on TV to watch the new Inhumans.
Karnak, that's Johnny.
What is Karnak's power?
You know, I wasn't quite sure, but I think I've nailed it actually, because what it seems like he can do is almost stop time and do calculations of like the physics of the physicality he wants to do. But what I think it is I wasn't sure if he could freeze time and then redo things, because that's what it almost seemed like. But I think what it is he can
project an outcome,
project an outcome of something, so he can figure out what he wants to do first. And they visually do it with sort of like your kind of classic, like if you have a genius, so it's like you see numbers and lines and that sort of stuff.
I think we saw it in that Almost Human episode with the geniuses who could like see the numbers.
Very
on
similar,
stuff.
yeah.
It's kind of got a cool look to it. Actually, I didn't mind it. Like, it's definitely stealing a little bit from Doctor Strange, I think, like that similar Rooney kind of things. But I mean, I guess if this is still not making sense, I think his power is basically like, do you remember Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies?
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly those fight scenes where he can like predict like the movement of everyone and like because he's so smart.
And I'm pretty sure in the comics, in this, he's played by like a human, obviously, but I think in the comics he's like red or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that. He's also a bit of a prick and a bummer.
he is a bit of a bummer.
He's really mean to a maid at some point.
Yeah,
and then later he's just a real downer. He's like really bumming everyone out.
Isn't it weird how I know what they're doing? They want to establish he's a character and he's a three-dimensional character. It's interesting, but you're right. It's like, why are you saddling with that on first episode? Like, it's not like you've learned to like something about him. You're like, oh, I've learned that he's a prick.
I mean, I have to give it to this actor. Is like, it's not with a lesser actor, this would be tougher to overcome. I think he's actually doing an okay job of still keeping him like. Yeah. I still want to watch that character, but it's just like I know it's just like, man, oh man, I got to spend time with this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did make me wonder. It's like, why does the royal family want him around? Other than his his useful skill of like predicting things.
Yeah.
And he's some sort of advisor to the king. We then have Maximus. Brother of Black Bolt.
And I like this actor who's playing Maximus. I think there is a problem, though, in the casting, and maybe you disagree with me. And this might be just because of the time. So he is, what's his face from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. He was in the battle. He was in the Battle of the Bastards.
Old rapey guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like they cast him because he was in that moment of that's that guy you love to hate, and they're like, we're going to cast that guy you love to hate as someone you're going to love to hate. And maybe as time goes on, you won't have that connection. But I watched it, and I was just like, oh, this just feels like stunt casting.
Well, I think you're not wrong. I think they are casting him for the purpose of loving to hate him, which, that actor is pretty likable in this role, actually. So it's not working in that direction. And, like, his character is, like, wild in this episode. Let's get into it. He has no powers and is basically like has lowly human DNA, which everyone looks down on him for. He does not like he does not like to be hidden on the moon. He wants to invade Earth. He's perpetually second guessing the king, and no one can seem to see any sort of problem coming down. Like he clearly was just like, you guys should be watching him. Everyone's like, he's fine. And he also he's hot for Medusa.
Yeah, they sort of they saddle him with a lot.
It's true. Like they saddle him with like all the worst traits, basically.
Yeah, it's like he's gonna betray everyone. Like scene one, you're like, oh, he's gonna betray them. He also is gonna get a little rapey. He also is gonna be violent with people. It's just like right away you just know they're gonna put everything on this guy.
They really have. I did like when he was talking to Medusa. He's like, you should be with me. We used to be the bad kids who hung out all the time. And I'm just like, what does that even mean? They're just like smoking. They're smoking on the moon, hanging out.
Well, and that's the thing. Oh, let me ask you a real quick question. Is there seem to be any mode of transportation on this city?
In the moon? No. I don't think it's very big. Is maybe the thing.
No. Well, they say it's a small city as well. I don't know if you caught the population, but it's not a lot.
I missed it.
It was several thousand, I think they said. But I just noticed there's no cars and there's no train. There's no bikes that I've seen, and I only mentioned that because later in the end of the first episode, Black Bolt seems very surprised and scared about cars.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of it too. Is Maximus really wants to go to Earth because he feels like they're too small up here. They're living on like very limited resources, and like, why should humans get all the good stuff while they hide on the moon?
Mm-hmm.
That's the premise of his character. Anyway, next let's meet Princess Crystal.
Oh, and I'm not gonna say anything against this actress, but I think she's cast because she's pretty, and that's it.
I don't know. I think she's.
It's a terrible character.
It's hard to tell if she's. We see her kind of maybe going to school, so I think she's supposed to be a teenager. So they're like treating her like a obnoxious teenager a little bit. I think I had more trouble buying Medusa. I think.
Oh, do you think so?
I think Medusa had more trouble with her role than I think this person did, but I could be wrong. We'll see as the show.
But here's
moves
what we
on.
know about her. She's got.
What's her power?
Well, I can't tell you. I don't know. It's maybe shooting sparks or something. I don't know what her power was.
She seems to at one point shoot a heat wave, possibly, but she also seems to be able to freeze things with her hands too. So I think she has like hot and cold, running hot and cold hands.
Yeah. But more importantly, she has sort of straight blonde hair that
her-
has
yeah.
a weird sort of straight line that cuts around right around the middle of it, and then a circle in the back of her head.
She's like a Pokeball symbol on the back of her head.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why. I'm assuming it's in the comics.
I would assume so too. Man, can you imagine how long hair and makeup must have had to spend to? Because she's like, I guess, blonde for the most part, or like a dyed blonde, and then she's just got a black streak running, like not up and down her hair, but like.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little spoiler, because I just began the first few minutes of episode 3, and I'll just tell you, this is not ruining anything. It's just to your point. Is that they had her hair like pulled back up, and I think it was that point. I think like, oh, we don't want to dye.
It must have been such a pain because you'd have to keep it level. She's an orphan who is adopted by sort of the family of Black Bolt and Maximus after their parents killed her parents while they were attempting a coup.
And they sort of weirdly, you don't get much more than that, but they go back to it several times. And I'm like, but you haven't really explained what happened. But they just keep they're like, you get it, right? Anyways,
Don't
back
worry,
history.
There'll be a flashback in coming up.
Yeah, there's so many flashbacks.
And finally, we meet Lockjaw.
Yeah, Lockjaw, who actually when we first meet him in the opening credits, because there's an animated. So what he is he is a I think they refer to him as a cow-sized dog.
He looks like a small car.
Yeah, he's like a bulldog.
I thought he might be a bulldog. I thought he might also be a pug.
He's one of those sort of flat-faced, thick-necked dogs, but he's gigantic, and he has the ability. I don't know if he can do it on his own. I assume he can, but he's commanded by Crystal.
Well, this is Crystal's pet.
Crystal's pet, and she basically will be like, "Take us over here," and he like teleports them.
Yeah,
wherever they need to go.
He can teleport wherever he wants to go, and if you're touching him, he'll teleport you with it.
But what I was saying is the opening credits, when you see the title Marvel's Inhumans, for whatever reason, there's a little Lockjaw cartoon at the corner, and he sort of like wipes you out with the
well, I actually know why. In the IMAX version of the movie, there's a longer title credit sequence where all the characters kind of got an animated title card that came up. And that was, I think, like a button on the end of it.
I see.
I don't know if we'll see it in future episodes. So now that we've kind of met them, we see them attending a terrogenesis ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of how the people on the moon become Inhumans. I guess like at puberty-ish, they're ushered into like a big glass phone booth looking thing.
Yeah.
They take out these special crystals that when put inside of the glass booths turn into smoke, or what's called a terrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And the person inside breathes in the smoke, and it activates their, latent genetic abilities.
Yeah, and so basically, everyone goes in. It's like a test as, what are you going to be?
Yeah.
You don't know, and you might come out something cool, and you might come out something lame, and you might come out with nothing at all.
Yeah. I guess it's like terraforming them. Like they're...
Yeah.
Because we put 2 teens in there. One comes out. She has cool butterfly wings. Everyone's very impressed. They're like,
yeah, and they're all like, "Ooh, look at her!
She's
fly."
a flyer."
Yeah. They love flyers.
They do. And the other guy comes out, and he has no discernible change. So because he has no discernible change, and probably just has the DNA of a boring old human, he's going to get sent to the moon's mines, the moon mines, where he'll mine for resources for the Inhumans who live above the surface.
They're sort of touching on what I believe is the sort of caste system that they have in this, which is those who have special powers and are very pretty, and those who did not get the best of the genetics.
Yeah, who have no special powers.
But I don't know what they're mining and why the mining needs to happen constantly. But I guess that's their only resource.
Yeah.
Is mining moon rocks?
That's basically it. It's like the only place they get anything from is from the moon's soil, I guess.
Yeah.
Maximus, of course, feels bad for the kid because he also is a powerless gentleman. Goes up and to comfort the child, and he touches him, and the kid is revealed to have some sort of future sight.
Yeah.
It's like one of those. It's like a classic sci-fi thing. Vague impressions of the future that are like abstract images that he very cryptic.
And that you can sort of use to justify anything you're doing. You're like, you did say I was going to walk to a room, right? So I have to walk to this room and kill this guy.
You said so.
You said I was going to go into a room.
But of course, when the genetic council kind of looks him over, they can't really pinpoint anything. So he's sent down to the mines.
Yeah.
Get down to those mines. We jumped to.
Do you think now if you and I went into those, what are the booths called?
Oh, I don't remember. If we got some terrogen in our
terrogen. What do you think? Do you think we'd be sent to the mines? Do you think you and I? Do you think you'd probably have the wings? I'd be look at that flyer.
I think you'd get a really long neck.
What would I do with my neck though?
I'd
just be like a giraffe,
like a giraffe, like a human giraffe.
And they'd be like, "Oh, look at that," and I'd be like, "Oh, it takes me a long time to swallow."
Well, and they'd be like,
I also have that voice. I'm a giraffe.
Yeah, right. Yep. They'd usually to like look over walls.
Oh, that's right. Everyone could always see me, but oh yeah, hey, what's over there? More people mining. I love my giraffe voice, by the way.
It's pretty good.
Thanks.
We jump to a dinner scene now where the whole cast is there, and Maximus has learned that the Black Bolt had sent Trident down to Earth to on a secret mission, and he was killed down there. And Maximus is mad because invading Earth is his thing.
So I should mention, if we haven't before, they know Earth exists. They know there are humans there.
They're hiding from them,
and they are hiding up on Earth. Up on the moon, but no one on Earth knows they're there. Although they do mention later,
come back to that.
They're like, we've heard of Inhumans. And sort of.
No one knows they're on the moon anyway.
Yes.
The reveal that Trident was down on Earth is to establish that for some mysterious reason there seems to be terrogen gas appearing around Earth, and when the Inhumans fled Earth up to the moon earlier, they left ancestors behind, and now those sort of ancestors of their ancestors can still turn into Inhumans, and hence why Lizard-Eyed Lady was down there. And Black Bolt's been basically sending secret missions down to rescue these Inhumans because they'll be prosecuted by the government, is that what his concern is. Or by the human race, I guess, not the government.
Right.
Also the government, but...
All bad all around.
All bad all around. So now that it's sort of all out there, they send Gorgon down to Earth to investigate via teleporting dog what happened to Trident.
And do you think that seems to be the only way you can get down anywhere?
Well, we'll see a second way a little later. I'll remind you.
There's a second way to get there. You're right. Sorry. You're right. That's a better way.
It's about this point in the episode now, Maximus decides to execute his very obvious plan to usurp the king.
Yeah.
The gunmen on Earth were his guys. He's been sending them down there to hunt down Trident. He kills off the head of the genetic council who won't join him in this. And he basically begins a process of...
a coup.
A coup. Like his men on Hawaii, he sends them after Gorgon. And we'll just talk about what happens to Gorgon over the course of this. While he's in Hawaii, he fights off the gunmen. And then he will wander down to the beach and shout Trident into the ocean because he's trying to find Trident.
He does that at least 3 times. His strategy for finding him is just walking around yelling his name. He doesn't even know if he's in the right area, city, country, anything. He just... Trident.
He's in the general vicinity, but
Trident.
It's not really a great plan. And at some point, he gets tired of yelling Trident into the ocean because he's mostly yelling it into the ocean.
Yes.
So he decides he's going to attempt to swim, and I watched him walking out. I'm like, you have hooves. This is never going to work.
I know.
And it doesn't.
It doesn't. No, he can't swim.
He immediately starts drowning.
And you might have to explain this to me. So here's what happens. You think, oh, he's drowning. That's the end of Gorgon. But of course it's Hawaii. So 2 Hawaiian surfers rescue him and pull him onto shore. And we sort of cut to them they're on the beach now, everyone's fine, and they're at a fire. Out. And they start having conversations that I seem to feel weren't warranted. Like, there's oh yeah, you got hoofs. You're one of those Inhumans, right? We heard about you. Anyway, so you want to be on a team and we'll help you do what you want to do? I was like, what? What is happening?
I mean, that's exactly what it is. Just they're they see his hooves and they're like, oh, you're one of those humans we've heard about. And then him, head of the royal guards is like, yeah, we live on the moon. We're right up there. He just starts spilling the beans entirely.
But it's they just the whole scene happens so fast where they're just like, oh yeah, well, we're on your side. And he's like, that's great. Well, I got to do this thing. Well, we'll join you with him. And they're like, oh yeah, we're ex-military. And I was like, what is happening right now? It's as if they ran out of time and they were like, jam everything into one scene.
I don't know. Well, this is what happens basically, because it's not in one, like it's over like 8 scenes, but they're like, he's like, Gorgon's like, what am I going to do about this coup? I can't get back to the moon. And they're like, why don't you just bring the fight to you? And so he calls up to Maximus. He's like, come fight me. And Maximus is like, all right. And then and he turns to the surfers and he's just like, you guys better get out of here. And they're like, no, this is our beach. We're going to fight with you. But you're like, why is any of this happening? It's hard to say.
Yeah, right.
What are these surfers going to do?
I know. It was just such an odd thing because it just, for a show that is taking great pains and lengths to explain a lot of back history with flashbacks and stuff, they also then have these really clumsy scenes to fill in gaps where you're like, just maybe have had like 3 less flashbacks. You could have worked on this scene a little more.
Explained why everyone knows about Inhumans, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's jump back up to the moon where Maximus goes after Karnak next, and we get to see him like beat Karnak beats Maximus's guards with his like, we see his powers in action. Yeah. And he runs off to warn the royal family of the coup that's coming. And he starts with Crystal. He's like, you got to get out of here. I got to go warn the people. And Crystal, kind of against his will, tells Lockjaw to take Karnak down to Hawaii where he left Gorgon. And she'll take care of the rest up here. And Lockjaw drops him off on the side of a cliff.
I don't know if this is just, it's as good as Lockjaw can do. But basically, really quickly, we'll get to the details. But Lockjaw's going to take a bunch of characters and send them all to Earth. And she's like, send them to where the last person is. But he doesn't put them. He puts them in the general vicinity.
He puts them on the.
It'd be like a major city, like it's London, England. Well, I'm going to put you in the East End. I'm putting you in the North End, and I'm putting you in the West End. It's like, okay, well, they're not really anywhere close to each other.
Yeah, they're all on Oahu. I think that's how you pronounce it. They're all on the island somewhere, but they're not close. But I mean, I think this is something I didn't mind because I was like, yeah, he's a dog. Why would you think he like understands what you want from him?
So you forgive the dog for his not having very good power.
Why would he Why would he know where you wanted to brace? Like,
I assume he would go to the exact spot he was just at.
He just like pops down and up. For him, it's nothing. Like, get anywhere.
It's true. He's just looking for a gigantic treat.
But anyway, Karnak's left on the side of this cliff, and eventually he decides he needs to climb down the cliff. And as he's climbing, because it's a steep cliff, and he's carefully picking his footholds, and then he falls and like bangs his head really hard. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, he'll just try that again because he has this power where he can try all the outcomes. No, he just fell off a cliff and banged his head. I was just like, what happened to that power where this isn't a problem for him?
I think the whole point of that was they just need him to bang his head so that maybe his powers aren't working as well.
Well, and that's it. He spends the rest of the episode wandering in circles, bleeding from the head on the island. And I mean, when I say rest of the episode, I mean like probably 40 minutes.
Yeah. In the next scene or two, he uses his powers to like show him direction where he should go and sort of stuff. So they're kind of working, but not.
I don't know. I think that scene's supposed to be because it's like a compass swirling, but he's standing over his own blood. I think what it's supposed to show is that they're not working. Like the compass isn't working anymore. But but that's the thing. I don't know how he fell off the cliff. Like his powers are specifically designed where he should be able to like feel his way down this thing, no problem. I don't know. Right. I'm really nitpicking that. But
hey, you didn't pick the power.
I thought for sure when he fell, I was like, oh, cool. We're gonna see another scene of him like using his power. And I was like, oh no, wait, he just
wouldn't
fell.
it be funny if there was like 4 scenes of him just falling down over and over, and he keeps trying different things. He just keeps falling.
Well, that's actually really fun. Like that's a fun idea to use with power for. Like, you know, that's a Final Destination or something. Like you run all the scenarios. But they're not doing that either.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to the moon to where Maximus and his guards finally attack Medusa in a fight sequence to a cover of Painted Black.
Yeah. I hated it. Hated it. The music in this is a little bit hit or miss. I only say that because if I don't notice the music, I'm fine with it. But it's things like this, just take me right out because I'm just like, this is terrible, guys. 0.
It's to cover up the fight sequence where the actress just has to stand perfectly still, and then they like CG and hair doing all the fighting, but she's just like standing like immobile in the middle of the scene.
Yeah, and I didn't like any of this.
So she beats up some of the guys, and some Inhuman with I guess a mind zapping power like puts his hands beside her head, and her brain gets zapped and tired, and then like Maximus comes out and like, join me, and she's like, no. And he takes out an electric razor,
which he just has with him.
Also, they must get these things from Earth. Like, why would they have built an electric razor? And in a very overly dramatic slow-mo sequence, he slowly shaves her head.
Yeah, and it's I don't know how to say this to not be insensitive. They shoot it as if it's like a rape scene, and at least that's how I felt. And it's supposed to have that same effect, and that's not to. I don't know. It just it seemed in bad taste to me. I just the way it was shot, I was like, you guys are gross. I don't like any of this.
I mean, I think what it is certainly the writer, who's probably the showrunner of the show, I imagine he wrote this episode, was like, this is such a huge betrayal by this person she knew.
It's such a big violation.
And her hair is her whole power and that. But you're right, it doesn't work. It's either feels way too dramatic for what's happening, or you're right, it's like a lot of it is in like extreme close-up with tears running down her face, and it like feels too like also too violating at the same time. Like the tone is like, and I get the idea, it's like, oh, this is such a disaster for her to lose her power, but it was so improperly executed.
And I was just like, oh guys, I just want to get through this is awful.
And they want to linger on it as long as they humanly can. But this is the point about the wig, because once she's shaved, she now basically has shaved short hair, which has also been dyed red very badly.
It sort of ends up looking like the thought I had was like, it looks like a wrestling character now.
It unfortunately, they never, like, for a character who's all about their hair, like that's the whole thing about them.
Yeah, they didn't nail it.
They couldn't get it as a wig. They kind of couldn't get it as CG, and even shaved, like, it looks weird.
Yeah.
It's so strange. At any rate, he sort of walks away to leave her there to contemplate what's happened. And of course, Crystal and Lockjaw show up, and Lockjaw takes her back down to the Diamond Head crater on the island, and she ends up like stuck in the crater. She sneaks onto a tour bus, which takes her into Honolulu. Maximus at some point will send like his head of security down, a woman named Oran, to, I guess, hunt down.
Who's wearing the original X-Men movies costume. That's what it looks like. It looks exactly like that.
They all kind of have like weird superhero costumes on. But she goes down to basically hunt her down in Hawaii. The way she gets down there, though, because basically Lockjaw's not taking Orion down there. So like, Orion, you got to go down to Earth and find them and kill them. And she goes, I guess there's two ways to get to Earth other than this dog that we get to see anyway. And she goes to speak to an Inhuman named Eldrock. What's Eldrock's deal?
His deal is he's a wall.
He's the big stone wall.
He's like something from Neverending Story. He's a wall or Labyrinth or something. He's a wall that has a face that kind of
squishes out of it.
Yeah, that comes out of it like a rock face. And he's got a little bit of sass. And she's just like, let me down. And he's like, I don't want to. And then she's like, you wouldn't believe what I'll do to your rock family. And he's like, all right.
I assume he has a human family. I assume this is what happens when he took the power in that glass booth. He just turned into a big rock wall.
Could you imagine the chance you might get wings, or you might become a big brick wall? Like, you're really, how did he fit in that tube?
I don't. It raises more questions than it answers. But yes, he then the bottom of his wall cracks open, and she can walk into it, and then she emerges on Earth inside of another rock wall.
Yeah, and then she had to like shoot her way out of the wall.
Like, it was like she was caught in an old stone wall up to the waist, and so she just shot at the wall until she got free.
Do you think we'll see another scene where someone goes through a wall and comes out into a wall?
100%. I mean, they had to establish this character because it's the only way off the moon. Because if Lockjaw is one way and they can't control Lockjaw, how else are they going to get off the moon?
I mean, it's really good this guy got this power, because otherwise they'd always be stuck.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's truly one of the most... I loved it, but I'm like, this is insane.
I should make a note. I kind of wish the show almost played up these weird elements a little bit more. I'm a little less involved in the intrigue and sort of backstabbing. More like, wall rock people. Sure.
Yeah. Once Iran sort of tracks down Medusa on Hawaii via their wrist communicators. They have wrist communicators. They can like open up into little mini computer tablets.
They're communicators. They essentially act as phones and trackers, and I think
Google Maps.
They do everything. Yeah, they do it all.
The two of them get in a little fight. Medusa stabs her repeatedly in the stomach when a particularly brutal little sequence.
Yeah, it's I can't remember where she just finds. Someone had a pocket knife in their pocket
on the tour bus. There was like a guy who ate an apple with a pocket knife. And I guess she stole it from him.
It was a real sharp pocket knife, and she stabs the woman, I don't know, 45 times.
Yeah, it's and then basically Medusa leaves the dead woman to go into the city to try to start tracking down Black Bolt, and we get a brief sequence just at the end of the show where Oran, I guess her power is to heal yourself several hours after you've been stabbed.
Yeah,
because it's the middle of the night, and so she gets up from where they left her for dead, and she lifts her shirt, and her stomach's like suddenly healing itself. And I was like, all right, did they not know that was your power?
Yeah, I know. Well, or maybe it was at least a way to stall her.
Yeah, I guess so. It could
Yeah,
be
because
the
they were
case.
like, she's got that great power of healing. Oh, don't worry about it. It takes like hours and hours to work. It happens instantly, hours later.
Hours from now, she'll be fine
Yeah.
in an instant.
Yeah.
Let's hop back up to Maximus, who's going to try to arrest Black Bolt here. But of course, as with everyone else, Lockjaw arrives just in the nick of time and steals Black Bolt away and drops him off in the middle of Honolulu in a big intersection that causes a car accident when everyone sees a giant dog and a weird moon man arrive.
And I thought here, there's little hints of it, but I was really excited because I thought the show was going to become Star Trek 4 at this moment.
Right.
You know, just like that fish out of water, like, can you believe where I am?
I mean, there were elements of it.
There definitely are.
And maybe we'll see a little more of them because quite clearly most of the show's gonna be set on Hawaii, which, to be fair, it's kind of fun that's set on Hawaii.
Yeah.
There's I love that it's in Honolulu, and Hawaii is playing Hawaii. I actually like it less when they're running around the jungle because it just looks like Lost. But once he's in the city, it's kind of fun. Like Lockjaw goes away, Black Bolt just wanders around and he can't speak, so he walks into a store because he's like, everyone wears different clothes than me. I better get new clothes so I blend in. And an overly helpful clerk at this suit store dresses him in a bespoke suit, even though he can't speak anything.
What I like though is she's like, she catches on quick. He walks in and she's like, "Oh hey, you looking for a suit? Seems like you can't talk. I can help you." It was just whoa, that was.
She's like, "I guess you don't speak English."
Yeah, and she's like, "I'll help you. What if I give you this perfectly tailored suit?" And then I actually thought it was a pretty good sequence because I think it plays into him sort of like being this king who just expects things. Is like, "Thanks for that suit. I'm just gonna walk out."
Yeah,
he
mugs his way up the door.
So he walks out and basically cops, call the cops. The amount of excessive police that come for this is crazy.
It
so
is funny.
Remember, he
walked out a door with a suit.
He shoplifted a suit. That's let's say at most what, $500.
I mean,
$700,
$2,500. Say
okay.
At most, it's a very nice suit.
I clearly don't know how much suits are, but sorry, sure, $2,500.
But let's say it's that good a suit.
Is that worth 10 squad cars?
Well, I kind of think what happens is because at first one car pulls up and the cop pulls out his gun. He's like, "Hey, put your hands behind your back." And when the guy goes to cuff Black Bolt just flips him over and cuffs him on the ground. Cuffs the cop with his own cuffs, and he's like, "I don't know, what are you doing?" He just mugs for the camera. At which point, you're right. There's not enough time for anyone to call it in, but 7 other cop cars pull up.
Yeah.
And they whip out their batons and they're beating and stomping him.
Yeah, it's an odd scene because there's at least 3 to 4 cops who just beat the hell out of him. And again it's over a stolen suit. Would they?
Well, it's like the earlier shaved head scene is I feel like that was also someone's oh, this is a commentary on the situation with police in the States right now.
Maybe.
But it does. But the problem is it doesn't work because he's just a handsome white dude in a suit. None of the commentary, because it's so over the top. The police beating is so over the top that I feel this is someone trying to make a comment about something who just doesn't understand what they're making a comment about.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it was so over the top, and it was played to be can you believe this abuse of power? And it's just what's going on here?
Yeah, I know. It's one of the issues I think that kind of start popping up is what you've mentioned is the tone of this.
Yeah.
It's sort of isn't this a weird sci-fi thing where there's a talking wall? That's fun. Oh, boss, wait, police brutality.
Yeah, and I mean, while they're beating him, he whimpers at some point, and it causes a noise coming out of his mouth, and it flips a cop car. And at that point, they're like, "Oh, you're an Inhuman," and so they catch on at that point that he might be a powerful Inhuman or mutant or whatever they are. And I think in the showrunner's mind, he's just this is X-Men, he's being discriminated against because of that. But they didn't know that. So it doesn't work. None of what he's doing works. It just feels it just never. None of it ever.
He doesn't show his
place.
power till he's already been beaten up.
Yeah, and basically the rest of the episode he'll be at the police station, getting mugshots, getting put into a prison cell. He kind of he cooperates, but we kind of leave him in this episode being put in a prison cell at this police station, which is all very silly because you're just well, he'll be just opens his mouth and just walk right out. It just seems
There's no tension to it's like hey, we just put Superman in handcuffs. I was like, okay.
I mean, what's kind of nice though is at least Anson Mount, his expression the entire time is just one of mild amusement.
I think we said earlier, I wasn't sure how I felt about his performance, but by this point, I think it's playing his sort of over, as you've said, mugging, his pretty broad acting plays much better as a fish out of water on Earth than it does on the moon.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to the moon one last time. What we see now is with the royal family sort of in exile on the run, Maximus catches Crystal and incapacitates Lockjaw, so there's no more teleporting anyone anywhere. He locks her up in sort of her room and is basically trying to convince her to join him and like bringing up, it's like, hey, your family thought this was dumb too, and my parents killed them. You should join me. And she's kind of like, nah, you're just a gross human. I don't like it. Like, she's very dismissive of his like gross genes. So, will she come around? I doubt it. But that's kind of like where they leave it with her. Maximus then goes down to the mines and like visits his old future sight friend and tells all the lowly miners, he's like, hey, things are changing around here now that I'm in charge. So this whole caste thing, we're going to turn it on its head. And finally, he kind of gives a big speech to, I guess, all of the Inhuman population. He's just like, sort of tells them, the royal family, they've all run off for some reason. I'm finding out why. I'm looking into it for you. Don't worry about it. But, as long as they're gone, what do you guys say? You want to invade Earth? How do you feel about that? And they're like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should. Maybe we should invade Earth. And kind of leaves us on that like note of like family in exile, arch-villain on the moon who wants to invade Earth. And that's sort of where we wrap up. But before we move on, there's a side story about fake NASA that we haven't talked about.
Yeah. And I didn't catch the scientist's name, but I just wrote that she kind of looked like Supergirl in disguise.
No, I mean, it's not bad, actually. That's not a bad description. She does actually look like the current Supergirl.
That's what I mean. She looks like, Supergirl in disguise.
That's Louise, who works for the Callisto Aerospace Control Center, better known as fake NASA.
Yeah.
And they had sent the moon rover up that bumped into the wall that Gorgon destroyed. And looking at the video footage of it, she looks at it and she's like, oh, it looks like that's a hoof stomping on this.
And they're like, a hoof? Are you crazy? We thought you were the most brilliant, beautiful, wonderful person ever, but instead, you're kind of crazy.
Yeah, her boss says, maybe you need to take a vacation. She's like, but what about these signals that show from the moon, energy signals landing in Hawaii? And they're like, you still sound crazy. And she's like, well, I'll go on vacation to Hawaii.
Yeah, she like winks at the audience like, can you believe I got away with it?
And then like the episode for her ends with like landing in a plane on Hawaii.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. That wraps up the episode.
But we have to say, they go back to that like 10 times.
Oh yeah, like her story, which honestly I think lasts about as long as we talked about it, is cut back to 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
Fun fact about that though, that was one of the things that weren't in the Imax movie. Like they just didn't show any of that subplot because it wouldn't have made any sense in the course of the movie. Like it's more probably for build up in the show because I'm sure she'll be a character.
Yeah, because as a viewer, you really want to know what happens.
You've got to know what's going on with Louise. I mean, we'll get into rating it, but it's funny. I think you were walking the line of this idea before. It's funny. The show feels, other than the things where they're trying to make it modern, like the stuff that's really not working, it feels like a real throwback. Like this could be Galactica 1980. Like it's silly. Like people on the moon, one's a king. They have silly powers. And then at the end of the first episode, they're stuck in Hawaii going on like one-off adventures every week and helping the locals. And there's an evil moon king looking down, sending like Gorgons after them. Like it feels like a throwback. It feels like such a throwback show.
Well, it's funny you say that because after I finished watching this, I thought there are 2 other versions of the show that I could see happening that are, I think, better than this. One is what you just mentioned, which is instead of having the whole first episode would be this betrayal and this coup, have that have already happened off screen. The episode starts with these guys, this whole team sent down to Earth, and like it's that like they have powers, but they have to deal with Earth. You're right, it's that sort of Galactica 1980 thing, but maybe not terrible. And it can be a little bit lighter, and there is this plot of them trying to get back. Back to the moon, and that's the villain off in the way, but that's the show. The other thing I thought is it almost feels like the whole Maximus betrayal could have been a season-long arc of developing this. There was other plots, and then at the very end, can you believe this guy you've come to know and love? He's turned against them all, and maybe it would have been a more effective turn as opposed to he shows up a scene and he's like, ain't I a weasel? By the way, I'm a weasel, and he takes over. It's like, oh, that happened fast.
They really telegraph it, for sure. I mean, yeah, I don't. It's a weird first episode with like some things I'm just like and it's funny. I absolutely know that's neither of those things are probably what he wanted to do. I think the showrunner's doing what they wanted to do, but it does feel like it's just so silly. Like everyone has weird powers, and none of them are consistent, and they're all like, I'm a wall. I've got butterfly wings. I've got hooves.
Well, yeah.
So it's too silly to be taken seriously.
That's it. There's a very silly sort of Silver Age powers thing happening, and it's like, play with that, but they wanted to make this adult.
Well, and I mean, I vaguely remember as it was coming out, like they definitely like did a lot of press and tried to like be like, it's like the Game of Thrones for Marvel, and it's just like, this is, you guys, not.
It's not that at all.
It's not that at all. It's a little too silly, and that's why I think maybe I like Anston Mount's portrayal, because it's silly. It's fun. It's a little silly. He, for me, is working, and maybe this is why I'm bumping on Medusa a little bit more. Is I feel like because she talks, they're forcing her to have all the dramatic monologues for him.
Yeah.
So she ends up having to like toe this line of like, isn't this
And you are right. She gets saddled with some really bad dialogue because, like, you know, we really went over this real quick, but there's a scene where, like, they're having a conversation on their wristwatches, but he can't talk. So she has to be like, oh, I can hear you. And is that your heart? Oh, it sounds like you're, like, pointing your finger over in that direction. I was like, oh, this poor actress has to deliver these terrible dialogue because the other actor can't. And you have to have her do both sides of the conversation.
She has to interpret him and then say it out loud for everyone.
Yeah.
It's rough for that actor. I think for that character for sure. Do you want? Should we? Let's rate this as a single thing.
Okay.
I know it's 2 episodes. Like Behold the Inhumans and Those Who Would Destroy Us. Let's give it a single rating for across the 2 of them.
I'm interested to hear what you say.
I think. I mean, you know, listen. It's a perfectly passable episode of television, but you know, it's not silly enough. It's too dramatic. It's just a 6 for me. I mean, could it gel into something? Maybe if it gives up on its like higher ambitions.
Yeah, I'm gonna go something similar, a little bit higher. I'm gonna go hope that it's gonna get better. So I'm gonna go with 6.5. But I would agree with you on pretty much all these points that there's some tone issues. I don't know if they're gonna remedy themselves. I'm kind of hoping they'll choose one or the other. I'm really hoping it'll be more silly than really dramatic, but I don't see that happening. But you never know.
We'll find out.
We'll find out, yeah.
All right, Jordan. Well, in the meantime, listeners, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And on Instagram and Twitter, well, you know, there'll be hooves. There'll be butterfly wings.
Transporting dogs.
There'll be sullen teenagers saying why and killing his parents. they'll all be there.
Yeah.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Continuum Drag. Oh,
Yep.
What's the name of this show?
Yeah.
Who knows? But listener, thank you for joining us here. And Jordan, see you next week.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rick-Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes, Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Jane McRae, and Stephen Packard.